It now gives me great pleasure to invite the following esteemed ministers onto the stage so that we can begin our panel discussion. Firstly, YAB Dato Sri Mustapa bin Mohamed, Minister of International Trade and Industry. Yang Berhormat, Senator Dato Sri Idris Jala, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department. Yang Berhormat, Dato Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department. Yang Berhormat, Dato Sri Dr. S. Subramaniam, Minister of Health. And Yang Berhormat, Dato Sri Ahmad Shabery, Minister of Communication and Multimedia. Over to you, Wan Zaleha.
Thank you, Frida. Good morning and welcome to ETP Turns 3. And we're doing it a little bit different this year. We have on the stage esteemed panelists who have key roles individually and collaboratively to ensure the successful implementation of the ETP. And just to remind you again, it is that Malaysia achieves her objective of being a high-income nation in 2020 with GNI per capita of $15,000 US and creating 3.3 million jobs and $444 billion US in investments. We're here today because we want to engage with all of you, because the government is serious. The people who are tasked to do this job, it's a bold aspiration. We want to engage with you, so feel free. We'd like to make this session very interactive. I'll start off by asking some questions, and then we're going to open it to the floor, and then we get the ball rolling. So we are at a critical point in our economic development. Growth is not taken for granted, but earned. And PEMANDU, let's say, has been rigorous in keeping the true north in driving the transformation. Now, we've just witnessed the presentation from the Prime Minister. He said some good things. We've got steady GDP growth and positive employment, 195 projects launched in 2010 that's from the ETP to catalyze economic activity. All sounds good. I'd like to ask Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Idris Jala, who's also the CEO of PEMANDU, are you happy?
Yeah, I'm very happy. I mean, we set out 3 years ago. None of these results that the Prime Minister announced, 10 evidence of success, none of them came by accident. They were by design and they were being planned very carefully. And most people in this room, one way or another, were involved in that process. Clearly, when you look back over the last 3 years, we have achieved a lot together. You can see that we've been able to grow our gross national income, as already pointed by the Prime Minister, at 49%, or if you like, based on the revised national numbers, at 41%. Whichever number you look at, we are on track towards achieving our gross national income per capita. And the resilience of our economy is also being put in. As you can see already, a lot of the numbers that PM put on with regards to government revenue and our cutting of fiscal deficit, I think the country is on a very good footing moving forward. That is not to say we cannot improve. I'll be the first one to say there's tremendous room for improvement. We can make a lot of improvement. The good news today is that we have been able to move really fast when we paid attention to those areas. Now that we are moving towards the next wave of things to do, when we put the same level of emphasis and focus on them, I think I'm very confident with my colleagues around the table that we can achieve what we set out to do. We are on track, and I think the Prime Minister put up numbers to say that, in fact, we might even get to the GNI per capita target 2 years ahead of schedule. But that's assuming, we're running at the same pace. We've got to keep the momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to address the next question perhaps to Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Abdul Wahid Omar. Now, everyone, you're of course the newest member of the fraternity, and all of us want to know, outside looking in, a corporate figure, we know what you're about. What are your thoughts on these ambitious goals? Are we a country in a hurry? What's it like in there, now that you're in there?
Well, thank you, Zaleha. When I was out there back in 2010, when the Prime Minister unveiled the new economic model for Malaysia to achieve the high income, or rather advanced nation status with high income, inclusive and sustainable, I was fully bought into that because it was very clear into the target and in terms of the 3 pillars. Now, high income, that's already been explained. Inclusive, meaning that no one will be left behind from this development, whether in terms of gender, urban-rural divide, ethnicity, and age, for example, and sustainable, not just from an environmental perspective, but also from the way we manage our natural resources, as well as in the way we in the government manage our government finances. So I guess I bought into that. So when I was given the opportunity to come into government 6 months ago, I thought that that's something that I could contribute and provide the private sector perspective into government and help drive the entire agenda, working together with my colleagues. And I think it's been a very interesting 6 months. And I could see that the numbers are there, they are for real. And as we speak, we're actually seeing the numbers progressing. Thank you.
Right, we'll get to the details later. Maybe I'll ask also our Minister of International Trade and Industry, Dato Sri. Dato Sri Mustapa, you are working at a high level of international trade and working towards dealing with the numbers all the time. I would just like to know how there is sometimes, as we go through this ETP, we also have to address the disconnect, maybe the gaps or discrepancies. How do you translate these ambitions and the drive as we charge towards 2020? How do we really translate that to the people, let's say, in Kelantan?
Thank you for mentioning Kelantan. There's free publicity. Firstly, there's 31 of us, ministers. We all one, we all united. PM is our driver, champion. Dato Sri Idris, our minibus driver. We had a meeting this morning, we talked about minibuses and buses. But anyway, firstly, we're all together. And the bottom line, as you say, is the benefits which people down there are going to derive from this transformation. Okay, well and good. Transformation, what does it mean for me? This is very important. PM spoke about jobs, which is important. Investments, yes, but so what? What is there for me? Inclusiveness is very important, but that's at the macro level. For me, what's important is I visit companies, I go to the ground. Incidentally, I'm not that high. You see, I'm high up there. I'm also on the ground many times. I'm both there, but more at the bottom as well. But anyway, when I go visit companies, I'm heartened by the fact that many of them come from the villages, they go to universities, and then they get a good job. That's very important. I visit companies in Penang or in Shah Alam or Johor. Yeah? They come up to me, I'm so-and-so, I come from this village. And this is very important. So people in the village, the parents get the benefits. I mean, they are, they are already old, of course. They might not be able to get direct benefits from ETP, but the children, those who attend university, that's important. I think what's important, yes, 3% unemployment, good, that's a macro number. But what's important for the man on the street, the person in the village who's got, mind you now, most families have got children who attend universities. In some cases, there are 5 children, all of them go to university. So people want a job, a decent job. So what's important for me as meeting minister, that's why we have transformed MIDA, making it more focused. The key issue for us is to make sure that people on the ground feel the benefits of ETP. And for me, as an example, is the creation of quality employment opportunities. It goes right to the village level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Dato Sri Subramaniam, I think he held another portfolio before as well, and that's to do with the Minister of Human Resource and also now your healthcare. Healthcare in Malaysia largely has been public sector driven, and now as we healthcare is a key engine of growth. So there's sometimes an imbalance. There's a gray area between profit and also delivering services to the people. So where, at a reasonable cost. So where do you see this going as we move in our 3rd year onwards?
Thank you very much. The aim of involving the healthcare as a part of the economic transformation program is actually to look into the potential which actually this industry as a whole provides, because healthcare, apart from the provision of service, is a huge industry which involves pharmaceuticals, which involve medical equipments, which involve the creation of the infrastructure for the provision of health. So that is the reason why the government identified the, the healthcare ETP as one of the ETPs. So through that, I think we have identified 13 focus areas in the healthcare industry to which we can actually give importance to develop Malaysia as a site for the development of the healthcare industry. For example, just to give you one or two examples, in the area of the development of generic drugs, although there has been small involvement of Malaysian pharmaceutical firms in this, through actually promoting the industry of generic drugs in Malaysia by the ETP, whereby all the agencies in the government who are actually related to this actually can play a coordinated role in supporting the industry to do this. We are seeing more and more companies in which the patency of original drugs expiring actually coming forth to Malaysia to place their factories here to manufacture generic drugs, not only for our local consumption, but as a center for Southeast Asia and the region as a whole. So this is the type of examples which we want to do, where we provide the necessary healthy environment for this to grow. You know, we go back to the original motive of the entire ETP, where the government plays a role as a facilitator, as a coordinator, and as a tracker of the process in which we actually moving forward, and to monitor the progress. You see, this was the reason why the entire program came, because recognizing maybe in the growth of the economy, there was frustrations within private investment, and how the government can actually get involved to reduce these frustrations. And I think that is the basic crux of the thing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your views on that. And now I would like to ask Dato Sri Shabery, and he is the Minister of a very transformative space, communication and multimedia. In fact, I would want to say that that is probably what would be driving change in all the sectors coming from communication and multimedia. So what are your thoughts on where we are in broadband deployment? How can, your ministry, how can we use that to further entrench the ETP goals?
Okay, thank you very much, Wan Zaleha. In fact, we fully understand that communication, you talk about broadband, especially in terms of infrastructure, creative industry is part and parcel of the whole ETP program as a whole. But bear in mind that today, everything is connected to internet. We need internet. You talk about in education, you talk about in health, transportation, e-government, and so on. That means how we measure the progress and competitiveness level of the government is how good is our broadband infrastructure. We are, indeed, we are quite proud. We talk about our household penetration today is about 67%, 3G coverage in the populated area about 84%. We talk about mobile penetration about 142%, if I'm not mistaken, about means every single person in the country, they have more than two, 1.5 mobile device that we have. But of course, when you talk about the Internet of Things today, it's not only in terms of coverage and penetration, it's more than that. We talk about speed. People were complaining in the hall today that, well, more people today, we cannot WhatsApp, we cannot do internet, trying to Google things and so on. These are the issues that we have to address. We talk about forecasting in terms of data demand. Right now we have about 3 to 4% average speed, 3 to 4 megabits of our average speed. We are not very happy with that because you talk about Internet of Things. It's not only in terms of usage, but everything is connected to Internet. Your camera, you talk about your CCTV, your refrigerator, you go to the gym, for instance, your treadmills, all connected into Internet. Then we talk about data demand. The ASEAN studies said that by 2018, Malaysia needs something around 49 megabit per second. Now we talk about, we are having about 10 megabit per second. That's a big challenge that we have to think, and if we think about the new model or remodeling our infrastructure, deployment and so on, these are the challenges that we have to face.
Thank you. Yes, it's not just about the technology, it's also about the content and what goes in. Now, I'll just ask a few more questions, I'll open it to the floor. It's stipulated in the ETP. It says here that 3.3 million jobs created in middle and high income categories by 2020. But a review of the skill requirements, according to this, says that there could be up to 1 million vacancies in 2020 that will be difficult to fill. So let's talk about human capital development. I mean, maybe there's a bit of a disconnect there to where we are, what we aspire to, and what the real situation is. Perhaps an answer from the various sectors. Dato Sri, Idris, maybe your take on it.
Creating jobs, very important. No doubt in my mind that if we don't create enough high-paying jobs, we cannot share the wealth equitably to the populace. So that's when we pegged 3.3 million high-paying jobs that we needed to be created. That's really to do that. Now, if you are in a situation where you have more jobs and you have less people to fill them, that's a good problem to have. Because I always believe that if you have more jobs than people to fill them, you can always look for people from outside the country to fill them. And because to me, creating jobs, people create value. And so there is scope always for making sure that you have a good mixture of local Malaysians and also foreign talents that come in to produce products and services for Malaysia that will be able to win it in a competitive market. So for us, those are very important. Let me also mention though, the Prime Minister has announced that we must push the women agenda very hard. 50% or a little more than 50% of the graduates are women today. Unfortunately, when they come and join the workforce, then eventually, naturally, when they get into childbearing age, many of them leave, but they don't actually always come back to the workforce. So that's why under Talent Corp, we are trying very hard to say, if we create much more flexible hours, much more flexible ways of working, part-timing, and et cetera, and if we can increase the number of women coming into the workforce, we have enough supply. Men and women, we will have enough supply to fill them. So that's why it's a very important agenda to make sure that we must win it on the diversity angle, bringing more women into the workforce. I think if we get more women to come in to work in the workforce with much more flexible arrangement, then I think we will have enough supply.
Thank you for bringing
Maybe
that
Zala,
up.
if I can chip in here.
Please, yes.
Being the minister in charge of talent cooperation, let me just perhaps make this point that we focus on 3 categories of people: Malaysians in Malaysia, Malaysians abroad, and foreign talents here in Malaysia. Now, the first priority will be to make sure that those Malaysians in Malaysia would have the job opportunities. Now, we do know that there are a number of graduates who are still unemployed, and yet there are still a number of jobs that are there available for them. So there is that mismatch which we need to fix. So we are addressing this through a number of programs, including the Graduate Employability Program, or GEMS program we're doing. So making sure that those people who have graduated, so we supplement them with additional skills to make them marketable and employable by the employers. Secondly, we have also implemented the structured internship program. So make sure that prior to them graduating, they are put through a structured program so that by the time they graduate, they will be ready for employment. And of course, as we expand, there will be a number of industries that we may not have the necessary talents here domestically. So this is where we may need to bring back some of them from abroad. So we're talking about, in some areas in financial services, the derivative risk management, for example, in some of the advanced healthcare, in oil and gas sector, which is growing very fast. So this is where we've been able to bring back some of the Malaysians abroad through our returning experts program. And of course, where we don't have many Malaysians at all, we do search for foreign talent and to bring them into Malaysia. Thank you.
Yes.
If you talk to young people in this room, or outside this room, or in the universities, I'm sure they're going to tell us that, yes, there are plenty of jobs, but it's so difficult to get a good job. In some cases, it's difficult to get a job. I mean, that's the feedback you get from them. So what's the problem? The problem is there is this mismatch, as mentioned by Minister Wahid just now. We're not producing the kind of people that's required by industry. This is a basic issue, which is hopefully will be addressed by the education blueprint, but that will take some time. So we have programs in government, talent corporation, and GLCs and Bank Negara, which have been put in place. So the challenge for us is to make sure that there is this disconnect between the numbers with how young people on the ground feel about job opportunities. We've got to bridge that gap. It's a question of communication, of course, and also in the longer term, we need to reform education, which is essential. Dato Sri Idris has got 2 points. On women, nobody will dispute that, and we all have to agree with them, and we all agree. Bottom of our heart, I mean, it's a very important point. We need to get women more actively engaged in employment. But this issue of what is meant by high-paying job? There used to be a definition in this country. High-paying means 3,000 a month. So we have to revisit that. Yeah? High-paying should be probably 10,000. I mean, difficult to survive in KL, 3,000. So we have been engaging with various stakeholders to come up, what is a high-paying job? One, of course, is a nominal salary. Another would be cost of living. But 3,000 certainly is not the kind of job. At this point of time, entry-level salaries for graduates. Some people, they pay 2,500, 3,000. I see some young faces nodding their heads in the audience. They agree with me, 2,000, 3,000. These are not the kind of jobs that we talk. When we talk about high income opportunities, it's not 2,000, 3,000 ringgit. So we got to revisit this number. Thank you.
Yeah, before you answer, if I would just add also that there was some statistics that I came across that in 2009, 56.4% of workers earn less than 1,500 ringgit. But in 2020, that is reduced to a still sizable 43.2%. So are we seriously going to call ourselves a high-income nation when we still have almost half of the population still earning 1,500? I'm just asking that question.
Okay. There are a few things which we have to take into consideration. One is, of course, the education of our society. And in any society in which a very high proportion of people actually have got access to complete high school and upper high school education, then they will always have a challenge and how you're going to fill in the lower category of jobs. And I think in Malaysia, we're already facing that because once a person has got an SPM certificate, they feel they should not do jobs which they consider which is of menial in nature. And that's one of the reasons why we have to go towards foreign labor to fill up this process. So at the same time, having an SPM itself doesn't give us an opportunity to get a job which is of sufficient value as what Dato Sri Mustapa said. So that is the reason why there is a need to enhance the quality of our workforce to ensure that this expectation which they have can be fulfilled by increasing the skill set at all levels. And one transformation which we have done, and is of course, is the emphasis which the government is now facing and what is called vocational training. That means apart from academic achievement, we want to produce school leavers who actually got specific skill sets in certain areas which will actually increase the employability. So I think that process, which the Ministry of Education has already started, will bear fruit in actually developing a workforce which is really skilled in specific areas. And the other area is, as far as graduates is concerned, is to increase the employability of them by enhancing. We have got specific examples in the Human Capital SRI, Strategic Reform Initiative. We did actually do programs in which those with ICT graduates were given an opportunity through the Human Capital SRI initiative to get professional accreditation and certification by international bodies. Once we did that, that actually increased the employability to a higher value jobs. Likewise, in the business services sector, there is one ETP which involves in the development of pure engineering designs. These were engineers who were developed to do designs, both in the automotive industry and in the aircraft industry. And when we actually started the ETP initially, one of the basic problems which was faced by the ETP was lack of skilled people who were actually design engineers. There was business, but the business required design engineers because we didn't have the number of engineers. The government actually supported that initiative by providing support to engineers to develop this capacity to become pure design engineers. And by creating the numbers, I think we managed to train about 300 or 400 of them during this period. That has actually enhanced this company's capacity to attract businesses and attract businesses from overseas because they've got the manpower. So there is a linkage in enhancing our manpower to actually increasing our competitiveness. And in line with that is our transformation of our workforce, which at one stage was 28% only skilled, and gradually to 33%, and by 2020 to be 50% of skilled manpower. So once we reach that, I think we will be in the correct state actually to ensure at least Malaysians will be taking high income jobs and high quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato Sri Shabery. I could move on to the next. I would like to ask all of you, maybe you can start on this one. Is the word or the vibe or the rumble is always this? As we have the wonderful numbers and everyone's doing their best, still there seems to be a great disconnect that the people on the ground do not feel this. Yes, you connect to them on an intellectual level, but the emotional level perhaps is found a little wanting. Is it important that you have to have everyone on board and they're not feeling these wonderful things that are happening? So everyone's take on that, and then we will open up to the floor. Dato Sri. No one wants to answer this. I think Dato Sri Mustapa sort of addressed that a little bit, but please, you are from...
Well, in terms of connected, definitely people thought that that's the role of Minister of Communication to make everything well communicated with the people down there. The problem with communication today, when talk about we measure the level of happiness. Well, I read somewhere, sorry to say that, our neighbor supposed to be the highest GDP, the highest GDP per capita, you talk about living standard and so on, that the highest level of unhappiness as well. But I read somewhere saying that one of the country that having the highest level of happiness is Afghanistan. So I was shocked when they thought that Afghanistan got the highest level of happiness, because over there they say that nobody complained about slow speed of broadband, because there is no broadband over there. Nobody complained about this room, I cannot Google, WhatsApp, and so on, because there is no WhatsApp, they don't talk about devices and so on. Definitely, people talk about, well, they want things better than what we are today, because they are trying to make comparison with others. But generally, we feel that things is getting better. You talk about jobs, you talk about level of education, level of infrastructure development that we have today. People, the speed taken by people want to come from, let's say, rural areas to Kuala Lumpur, and as well, much, much better today. But of course, that's what Dato Idris Jala said, there are more rooms. Last time we thought that the role of trying to inform the public is the role of one ministry. That's why we had Ministry of Information. But now, under Dato Najib, they say no more, Ministry of Information. The role of informing the public is not the role of one ministry. Everybody must come up with their own CIO, Chief Information Officer. Every ministry, every department, every, even GLC, because information is big. Nobody can say that they are the monopoly of information in the country. So that's why, in terms of managing the information, is very important, and we have to come up with a new way, revisit, looking at it, how we going to satisfy the people and trying to engage the people at all levels.